My name is Sam and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about something that one of you mentioned in a comment on my video on why I love languages, which I will link here. And he raised a very important point about the comfort of speaking your own mother tongue, and I want to expand on that. Before we start, it would be amazing if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel below, and do let me know in the comments what you think about what I am going to say. So, as you know, if you've watched this channel before, I am a language geek. I love languages, and English is my biggest love. Who needs a boyfriend when you have English? My first language is Italian technically, but I don't like speaking it for reasons unknown to me. Surely there is something psychological there. I've always thought that it was my way. Speaking English is my way of escaping the fact that I couldn't really be gay back home, but this is just a theory that I came up with myself. It's never been confirmed or proved by a psychologist. It's just the explanation that I've given myself. And yes, so I love languages. I love the fact that I can put together sounds that ultimately mean nothing to my brain, to my Italian brain. I can put these sounds together into words that again don't really mean anything, but to me originally, but they mean something to you, and I love that. And I love the fact that now that I can, technically these English sounds mean nothing to my Italian brain, but I feel languages on a physical and chemical level, so I can feel them in my bones. I don't know how to explain it, and I love them. I absolutely love the idea of communicating in another language, and I also like the meta-linguistic area of things, even though I never really studied linguistics because I became an actor, but it's something that really, really interests me, but unfortunately I have no time to dedicate to it. Now, I like English, I like German, I don't like Latin languages, although I love Latin. I studied it in school, but I don't like Italian, French and Spanish. I'm really sorry, I speak them, but they're not my languages of choice. I prefer Germanic languages, again English being the apotheosis of what a language could be, and German. Now, the point that was raised was the fact that I feel more comfortable and more myself speaking English, and that's what I always say, and that's how I feel. So not only do I not like Italian, again for reasons unknown, but I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I can express myself fully in terms of vocabulary as well, because I don't know it that well. I know that people will say that I was born and raised in Italy. I came to London when I was 18, so I am Italian, alright. No one in my family speaks English or any other language, so I am Italian through and through in terms of, on paper, I am Italian. But I never speak Italian here in London. Actually, now I speak it more because of my ASMR videos, and a lot of Italians commented on my first Italian videos saying that they could really hear the struggle, and they could hear that, well, comparing my English videos to my Italian ones, that they could hear and see that I am much more comfortable in English. I think now things are slightly changing a little bit because I am more exposed to Italian by the fact that I speak it more often in my videos. But yes, in England I do not speak Italian. I avoid it because, again, I don't like it. And also, when I speak a language and I live in the country where that language is spoken, I want to be as native as possible, and it's my own hang up. It doesn't mean that everyone needs to want to speak a language like that, or it doesn't mean that everyone must want to be integrated like that. It's just the way I'm a losery geek, so obviously this is how my mind works. So I want to be English. I want other English people to think that I am English by the way I speak, by what I talk about. So, I can reference English celebrities, but not because we need to talk about gossip necessarily, but there are celebrities that we all know. In your own country, there are celebrities that you all know, even if, regardless of whether you like them or not, whether you follow what they do or not, you just know the names. So I want to be that. And also, if I'm in England, I abandoned my family, who I'm really close to. So I gave all of that up so I could speak English. So I'm not here to speak Italian. So I don't actively look for Italian friends or Italian circles. But if I meet Italians, as weird and losery as this sounds, I will never speak Italian. First of all, I never really say that I am Italian unless it's strictly required, so they would never even know. But if it does come up, I say, I am Italian, I understand Italian, you can speak Italian, and I will understand, but I will only reply in English. Call me weird, you wouldn't be the first ones to do so, but I stand by it. I'm immovable on that, because again, I'm a language geek first of all, and I've moved to England to speak English. I know that a lot of foreigners come to England for money or for other reasons, and anyway, they want to keep a close connection to their roots through their language. I understand it, I don't necessarily condone it, but again, it's a different view which is completely respectable and legitimate. It's not how I feel about it. So Italian is not part of my being anymore, apart from when I go back home, because obviously nobody speaks English, even though I would love that, for that to be the case. And yes, I am just freer in the way I can manipulate English as a language. I can express myself better, I feel more alive when I speak English, and again now it's getting a bit better because I am more exposed to Italian, but I can't really, or at least I feel like I can't express emotions when I speak Italian, especially in the past. When I went back home, I come from a village of 500 inhabitants in the middle of nowhere, so the fact that I moved to London, and I think now it's very common for people from my town to move abroad, but when I did it, I think I was one of the very first ones, so I'm a bit of not of a celebrity, but I am I'm the boy that, embarked on this humongous journey of moving to a different country. Not even in close Europe, but I went to an island. So when people ask me how my London life was, I would say in Italian, yes, I'm very happy, it's great, I love it. So I sounded like a snarling dog because I couldn't really express emotions through my speech, or at least again that's how I felt, and I still do, but a little bit less so. But I felt extremely rude because obviously these people were very happy to see me. They wanted to show me their support and their happiness for me, and I couldn't really reciprocate that because it almost sounded like I didn't even want to talk to them. But none of that was how I was feeling about talking to them. It's just how Italian forces my brain to, my body and my voice to come out very flat, very emotionless. Again, why that is not part of today's topic. But so yes, somebody, I think they are German, and they told me that they find it fascinating to see that someone is more comfortable speaking a second language, which is not their first, because as much as I would like English to be my first language, it's not. I feel more English almost than I feel Italian. Or maybe, okay, no, in terms of identity, maybe, no, it's not like that, but I feel like my language, I feel like my first language is English. Because not only do I like it, but I also can use it more. And I know this sounds stupid and psychotic, but when I go back to Italy, obviously I have to speak Italian. And when I come back here, like especially the first few days, I can actually taste English in my mouth, because after 10 days, 12 days of abstinence from English, I can literally savour it, and it tastes so good. I have a feeling YouTube will send me some kind of psychological help when they hear this, but it's true. I don't know how to explain it, but it's amazing. It's amazing. And this German person said that as good as they can be at speaking another language, they always know that they have comfort in speaking German, because they know that they can't really make mistakes. They will never know another language as well as they know German. So German brings them comfort, which is 100% understandable and logical and normal. So I have nothing to say against that. So this is not a video to try to debunk that myth, because first of all, it's not a myth, it's reality, and that is the way that it should be. So I'm only making this video to reiterate once more that I am weird. So I wish I felt that comfort, because it would make sense. But I do and I don't, in the sense that I don't feel comfortable speaking Italian, in the sense that it makes me chemically sad in my brain, and I don't like it. And I know that I can't fully express myself. I don't know the words that can express different nuances about how I feel about something. I'm not saying that Italian doesn't have these words, I'm just saying that I don't know them. So, yes, I come alive when I speak English. I know it. Most of you who have watched both my videos both in English and Italian have said that, so it's there. It's not that I'm making this up. I am more myself when I can speak English. There is no doubt about that. But I'm also a language geek and a language teacher. I'm an English teacher. So weirdly, I do feel some kind of comfort in speaking Italian, but it's a more of a scientific comfort, meaning that whilst I know that if I want to express myself well, I excel at doing that in English. So doing that in Italian would make me uncomfortable as a human being. I know that Italian will always be my first language, whether I like it or not. Meaning that when I speak Italian, I think I make quite a few mistakes because my mind and my brain think in English. And again, there are structures that I don't use anymore. Italian is extremely hard, much harder and more complicated than English. Now, if Italian is your first language, obviously it doesn't really affect you because you don't go through that process of comparison and also of being used to a different structure like I am. But so Italian technically should come more easily to me, but because I've now switched to English, which I am more comfortable with, and also whose structure is much easier, it's hard sometimes to use structures that don't even exist in English but that are fundamental in Italian. And actually Italian is so complicated that even Italians have created technically incorrect ways to express some very grammatically complex structures. For example, the subjunctive in English, it basically doesn't exist. In Italian, we have 4 forms of the subjunctive, and some of them are so complicated that Italians have created an easier way around them. So yes, you know a language is difficult when the speakers of that language think it's so difficult that they want to come up with easier ways to use the language. But I know that I will always be a native speaker, and if I make a mistake when I speak Italian, it will always be chalked up to just a slip of the tongue. Nobody will ever think that I'm not a 10 out of 10 Italian speaker. Obviously, native speakers make mistakes in their own language. It's normal. In fact, people that study and speak a second language very well to the level that I have done, technically they speak that language better than the native speakers of that language, because we know the technical rules and we really know when to use them. But if a native English speaker makes a mistake when they speak English, we might think that they're a little bit less educated than they could be, but we would never think any less of them as native speakers. We would never say, oh, they're not really a native speaker because that they made that mistake. We would think, oh, it's just a slip of the tongue, or maybe that person is not extremely educated, but they're still a native speaker. We can see that through everything else, like pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, and everything else. Okay, so making a mistake in your native language doesn't affect the perception of excellence as a native speaker that people have of you. So if I make a mistake in Italian, it's fine, who cares? Nobody will question my Italianness. So I do derive some comfort in that, which I don't have. So I don't have this kind of comfort in English, but this is mainly because of me. So as well as I could possibly speak English, I know that English will never be my intrinsically first language. So there will always be a word, 1 or 2 words that native speakers will know that I don't. Now, my level of English is so high that the words that I don't know in English are so irrelevant that I simply don't know them because nobody uses them. Okay, so I know my vocabulary is even more vast than the average vocabulary of a native speaker. That the average vocabulary that a native speaker would use on an average day, simply because I'm a language geek. I like English, and I like beautiful English, and I've actively studied it. I don't particularly use it here in these videos because we're not here to discuss English as a language. So I know that, but again, there will always be a word that maybe someone on the news or someone in a newspaper uses that I may not know, and that used to give me a lot of grief, anger, frustration, fury. But I've now accepted the fact that, again, the words that I do need to be considered native, basically, I have them. The other words are just extra little things that I want to know simply because I'm a loser, but I don't need them to qualify as a native. Let's put it like that. But I know that if I ever make a mistake in English, I am at this stage where, to be honest, I don't think people would even realise, or they would treat me as a native the same way. They would say, oh, that native English speaker had a slip of the tongue, or maybe they're nervous, they made that little mistake. I think they would apply the same approach to me. So if I make a mistake in English, I feel inadequate. Not because other people make me feel inadequate, but because I am an English teacher and I am a perfectionist when it comes to languages. So I know that whilst a native speaker may not even hear the mistake, or they might just ignore it the same way they would ignore a mistake from a real native speaker, I feel like I'm at fault because I failed myself. I failed my nature because in my head I think that I shouldn't make any mistakes, because if you're a native speaker you're perfect. But at the same time I know that it's not true. Native speakers make mistakes as well. Or again, they simply have a slip of the tongue every now and then. But, so yes, I always have this little, not anxiety, but this little, nagging thing that makes me feel like the minute I make a mistake, people will see right through me and my cover will be blown. And this happens with pronunciation as well. Most people assume that I am English. They would never even question the fact that I am or I am not. So when they ask me where I'm from and they say Italy, they're shocked because they were expecting, London, Oxford, Cambridge, or any town in England they were expecting. But when I say Italy, so their brain is not even ready to receive that information that I am a foreigner. Or when I say I am from Italy, they assume that I'm just talking about my heritage, or maybe my parents are technically Italian, but I was born and bred here, which I take as a compliment. But some people still hear a bit of an accent, and that bothers me. The percentage of those people is very, very low, but it still bothers me. It also depends on the context. I think doing ASMR doesn't really help because I know that I can't be myself, in the sense that I would never speak like this and like in a soft-spoken voice, and I know that I speak a bit too fast for ASMR, and I always try to tell myself to slow down, but I never succeed, but I would also speak much faster in real life. And maybe I should make a different video about this, but I know my strengths and weaknesses as a speaker. I excel at real life conversation. If I talk to someone real in front of me, that's where my English skills excel. If I talk to someone on the phone or through a camera, it's really bad, but not because everyone dreads speaking on the phone because they can't see the other person, they can't see their body language. But for me, the problem is not that I don't understand them, it's just that I don't have a person in front of me, so my English gets worse. And even talking to a camera is very uncomfortable for me, I have to say, although I am a YouTuber, because I don't have anyone to talk to, so my English is not as perfect as it could be. And I always thought that since I am a performer and I am very self-absorbed, I see speaking a different language as a show, as a performance. And maybe that's why I like it. So yes, I do. The comfort that I take from speaking Italian is that whatever I say, I will always be considered native. Even if I don't know a specific word in Italian, people know that I've been living in London for 14 years, so they will simply think, oh, he's Italian, but obviously he's forgotten a few words or he doesn't know a few words because he lives in London. If I make a mistake in English, although again I don't think people would ever really pick up on it, in my head I'm going, oh, now they'll think I'm a foreigner, that's why I made that mistake. And I don't like that. And I've also realised this. Now, speaking your real first language means that you're absolutely not thinking about the structure of what you're saying, or you're not thinking about the pronunciation, you're not thinking about anything, you're just thinking about concepts that automatically and immediately and instantly come out without you. The thing that you can potentially work on is vocabulary, in the sense that I can choose a synonym over a different one, or if I want to say something as a fact, I use a specific word. If I want to use it as an insult, I can use a different word to express the same concept, but that word expresses also malice and evil, or the other way, or the opposite if I want to be nice. So if I want to be extra nice, I can, rather than just using factual words, I can use prettier and nicer words. So that's maybe the only little moment where, even as a native speaker, you need to think about the words that you choose, but you don't think about grammar, you don't think about pronunciation. Now, as good as I am at languages, I also have a video here where I talk about not being modest. I know that I'm good at languages. As good as I am at languages, and as part of my being, as they feel to me, okay, let's focus on English, because it's the one that I really do feel more native in. I know that even now, while I'm talking to you, most of these words are coming out of my mouth as if I were an actual native speaker, in the sense that I don't think about them. I don't think about the grammar, rather. I don't think about the grammar, I don't think about the pronunciation, because I've been exposed to them for so long, and I've worked very, very hard in the past to make it so that it all feels natural and as instant as a real native language would feel. Again, maybe only because I'm a language geek. For me, speaking is a show, in the sense that if I decide to choose a nicer and more sophisticated word over another. It's a conscious decision that I am aware of. And while I'm saying it, I'm thinking, oh my God, you're so good that you even know that word, and not only do you know it, but you've used it. I know it's very self-indulgent and self-absorbed of me, but you should know by now that that describes me perfectly. So, I think I've recently come to the conclusion that I think that one of the reasons why I like speaking foreign languages, apart from potential psychological issues related to being in Italy and being gay in Italy, I think it's because speaking my native language is boring. Any native language. It's a random fact that my native language is Italian, but for me, speaking Italian requires no effort. Even though, again, I need to think about the subjunctives, the difficult subjunctives, like every Italian has to. But I don't need to think about grammar, and Italian grammar, for someone like me who loves grammar, Italian is a language to speak because we have so much grammar, but because it comes out of me naturally, I don't even appreciate it. Like German has more grammar than English, but I know that I need to know it. I need to make conscious decisions when I say one thing over another. And I'm aware of it, and that makes me feel good about myself. I feel like I'm putting on a show. Because, yes, I am so good that I managed to remember or to deduce that in that case I need to use that specific grammar structure. Whereas in Italian, as sophisticated and as perfect as my Italian could be, it's just my native language. So I don't even feel the effort that my brain puts into it. And this happens in every language. Whenever, if your native language is English, you don't know what you're doing, what your brain is doing for you, and what your mouth is doing for you in terms of pronunciation. If you're German, it's the same. If you're Chinese, it's the same, yeah. So, I think speaking my native language bores my brain. And speaking a different language, so my brain is always active. Even when I speak English, even though it's literally, it does feel like my first language to me, there is still a little bit of brain activity that has to go into my speech. And I think my brain likes that. So, for example, as I've mentioned before, yes, I don't like Latin languages, and I really do not like Spanish. I'm sorry to any Spanish speakers out there. I've done a video in Spanish. I studied Spanish because I studied languages in school, but would I ever choose to speak Spanish? No. In terms of sound, I even like it less than Italian, and that is saying something. Again, it's not an insult, because when I said this to Italians about Italian, they all attacked me because how dare I say that Italian is not a beautiful language. Well, it's not to me. The same way I don't like spicy food and I don't like beans, I am entitled to not like a language for whatever reason. It's not an insult to the native speakers of that language because they just so happen to speak that language. It's not even like they needed to work hard to achieve that language. It was given to them by just living in that environment. So, hey. But even though I don't like Spanish, I think my brain would still rather speak Spanish than Italian, because at least in Spanish I would need to put some kind of brain activity into it. It's a bit of a stretch in the sense that I really don't like Spanish, so I'm not sure But yeah, I think if I had to choose speaking Spanish between English and Spanish, Italian and Spanish, I think speaking Spanish would still give me a sense of achievement, a sense of pride, a little bit more. So, I hope I've explained myself well and correctly in this beautiful language that we will call English. And yes, do let me know what you think. I mentioned this in my video in Italian, so most of you would not have watched that. All of this being said, speaking a specific language can also be related to specific experiences. So what I do in my Italian videos, especially what I did in the very beginning when I first started making weekly videos, was that I talked about things that only Italians would know. So I talked about Italian music or Italian TV programs that I could describe to you in English, just to give you an idea of what they are, but they would mean nothing to you. You would attach no emotional importance or emotional connection to them simply because you don't know them. It's almost, so if I talked about EastEnders or Coronation Street to Italians, for those of you who are not from England, they're two very, 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 very big soap operas here. I could explain these soap operas to people that are not from England, but they would attach no emotional connection to it, so it would be an empty video. But whereas with Italians, I can talk about these Italian things that I wouldn't want to talk about in English, because you would be bored, I would be bored of explaining them to you, also because it would be just a scientific lecture. So I would tell you what this is, what this is, what this is, but you, as someone who's not part of the culture, wouldn't feel anything about it. So yes, when I started doing Italian videos, I was happy to be able to talk about these things that only Italians would understand. So and weirdly, I'm taking this to the extreme. Obviously, when I go back home for Christmas, and I'm very close to my family and I love Christmas, I want to speak Italian because that's a language that we are all connected by. If I ever find a boyfriend who doesn't speak Italian, and if I ever take him home over Christmas, that would bother me, not just because it's not necessarily the translating in itself that would bother me, so as in the physical effort of translating. It would be the fact that speaking English in that context is inappropriate, in the sense that I want to be able to talk to my family about Italian things. Yes, it would be fantastic if all my family spoke English, so we could all talk about Italian things in English, but since that is not the case, in that situation, English would be a hindrance. Yes, it would be absolutely not only unnecessary, but actively a problem. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, on that note, I think I've explained myself fairly well, and yeah, do let me know in the comments how you feel about this, if you've ever thought about it, and if you experience the same thing when you speak another language that may not be English, if you identify more with a specific language that is not your native one. And on that note, I will let you go. Bye bye.